Trusted, credible, nonpartisan. The Hill's unbiased news and analysis on policy and politics is delivered straight to the halls of Congress with unparalleled engagement in the Beltway and beyond. A new administration, a new Congress, and a new position on the economy and investing in America. From enterprise reporting to breaking news to live events, The Hill stays on the pulse of what's next. Welcome to The Hill's Invest in America Summit.
The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer.
Welcome to the Hill's Invest in America Summit. We'd like to thank our presenting sponsors, American Property Owners Alliance, BCG, and Philip Morris International US, as well as our participating sponsors, Consumer Bankers Association and Decision Desk HQ, for their support in making today's program possible. Now please welcome to the stage Bill Salmon, SVP of Editorial Content for The Hill.
Good morning, everyone. I was told I didn't need to stand on the stage because I'm so tall. So anyway, good morning and welcome to the Hill's Invest in America Summit. I am Bill Salmon, SVP of Editorial Content for The Hill. I'm so delighted that you're here today. You know, for the first time in almost 4 years, a majority of Americans now view the U.S. economy as strong. Kind of a surprising statistic, but that's what the latest Harvard-Harris poll shows, although the same poll shows that only 39% of Americans believe that the U.S. economy is on the right track. So it's a bit of a complicated economic picture as the president embarks on his second-term agenda and tries to enact his agenda. But, you know, as we enter what is now, I guess, the 5th month of his second term, it's pretty clear what that agenda entails, at least economically. We can start with the obvious, which is this administration has made no secret of the fact that they envision a sort of domestic manufacturing renaissance, if you will. And to that end, we have seen tariffs, including today, we saw the steel and aluminum tariffs double. We are seeing, talk of tax cuts, deregulation. We're seeing what the president calls the unleashing of American power, all of which creates a sort of a complicated mix of economic cross currents, and it makes it, frankly, a little bit tricky to figure out. The title of today's conference is Invest in America, but as stakeholders in the economy, and I hope we're all, obviously rooting for the U.S. economy, it does make it a little complicated as to figure out how best and how wisely to invest in America. But I think the way to figure that out is to do what we're going to do today, which is drill down on some of these economic questions. There's so many of them. We're going to get into a lot of them today. I wrote down a few just to kind of prime the conversational pump. One, how can U.S. businesses compete on the global stage while retaining their innovative edge? Two, how is the Trump administration reshaping the federal budget and the American workforce? Three, how effectively are tariffs being used as a path to incentivize domestic production and reduce reliance on foreign supply chains? And finally, four, and this is admittedly covering a lot of ground, what major changes can investors anticipate when it comes to AI, crypto, wealth management, insurance, taxes, and labor? So there's a lot to chew on there. These are big, thorny questions, but fortunately, the Hill's Invest in America Summit is going to be providing some answers, hopefully, that will help us make sense of it all. So again, I want to welcome everyone in the room. I want to welcome our audience watching on our live stream. If you're following along on social media, you can use the hashtag #TheHillEconomy. We are now going to welcome to the stage a couple of people who know a lot more about the economy than I do. One is veteran business journalist, author, board member, and startup founder Betty Liu, and she's going to be in conversation with the chairman of the Joint Economic Committee. You talk about a good guest to kick this thing off, and the congressman from the great state of Arizona, David Schweikert.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for The Hill for having me, and Congressman Schweikert, thank you so much for joining me. It's a great pleasure to be here on stage with you.
Look, you know you're in trouble when you see her, and because you've been a Bloomberg addict in a previous life, you look at her and she's a celebrity.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so let's just get straight into it.
Okay.
You know, you in your career, you've been a fiscal budget hawk. You know, you've warned about the federal debt. You know, the Senate now has this big, beautiful bill in their hands, and there's so much talk about how it's going to increase the deficit by $3 to $5 trillion. You saw Elon Musk yesterday call this an abomination. Why did you support it?
You find yourself squeezed in an interesting way. Most folks do not understand or appreciate the changes that expire next year. And so like in a district like mine, my average family is over a couple $1,000s tax hike. What we did, which was different, is, and we will keep showing up and showing up and showing up, we've showed up with pieces of legislation to pay for it. We've introduced a major fixing of Medicare Advantage. Preliminary score on that is coming in at $1.84 trillion over 10. We've shown up with a talent-based immigration bill, which I'm still shocked that the business community isn't crawling all over Washington saying, we can't hit our economic growth. You're going to give us expensing on research and development, but one of the complaints you had in previous years is we didn't have enough technical talent for that research and development. We have the legislation, it's introduced, it's actually a well-designed bill, yet business once again doesn't show up and help. We've also done the Forgotten Funds bill, you know, the cash. Just those bills more than offset the borrowing side of the reconciliation budget. And that's part of my fixation is there's actual policy solutions. And Washington's intellect has so degraded where, you know, the left screams about things on Medicaid, and then you showed the charts, and it doesn't add up. And then my side, we scream about things, we make up economics, and that's not in the charts. And it's like you and I are trying to operate in a math-free environment.
Yeah, so you're saying the devil's in the details.
The devil's in the policy, actually. And forgive me for trying to snip that language. But the fact of the matter is, what's the driver of U.S. debt? I mean, it's an honest question. What are we actually up against? What do we refuse to talk about? And I would argue U.S. demographics. And you know, look, just another idiot who's in Congress. But the fact of the matter, if you take a look at our demographics, that is the driver of U.S. sovereign debt. If you go back 20 years ago, we have almost the exact same number of 18-year-olds as we did 20 years ago. But today, 20 years later, we have doubled the number of people 65 and up. So over the next decade, baseline, interest and Medicare account for almost the baseline $22 trillion of borrowing.
Yeah.
And there becomes your classic problem. If you're not going to get members of Congress on whatever your political ideology is saying, you need a revolution in the cost of delivering health care. And the past 20 years, the debate on health care has been about financing. Who gets subsidized, you know, who gets the subsidy, who pays for it. We don't have, hey, what about the revolution of what we're going to cure and the use of technology to change the price? And it becomes very lonely when you realize much of our system, like our MA reform, is just trying to realign incentives. So the insurer provider who manages the managed care model within Medicare Advantage Part C makes a profit by helping their population be healthier and therefore a lower user than scoring them as sicker all the time. We just have all this misdesign.
Yeah, and Congressman Schweikert, I think that, so what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's been said not in the way you're saying it, but certainly in different aspects, that we're not having the tough conversations, essentially, in Congress. We're not having those tough conversations.
See, this is why you're a professional. You say it in a few words what takes me paragraphs.
However, you know, we live in this world of compromise, and everyone speaks to their own constituents. So at the end of the day, for us looking at what Congress is doing and what is going to pass, what is going to pass? How is this going to look at the end of the day?
I will answer that part, but I need to say, you first also have to say the traditional of, well, you know, compromise, get half a loaf. You have to make the argument that the loaf is the right argument. Matter of fact, on the drive over here, we were looking at some of our data we're working on in regards to diabetes and how we make a difference there. And the debate we get in Congress is, you know, this much more money for diabetes care and maintenance, and we're working on what would be the revolution of curing and taking pre-diabetic populations and have them not move into type 2. That's a completely different loaf. And there's the problem is the intellect here in the business community, in the lobbying community, in the press community, and the brain trust that gets elected, we're having the wrong debate. And there becomes what's interesting. What comes back out of the Senate? So far, the debate we had in the House, the debate I hear in the Senate, is heartbreaking. Because it's this constant, well, I have this constituency, it wants this money. I have this constituency, it wants this money. What happened to being one of the negotiators in the 2017, so I was on Ways and Means in 2017 also. And Kevin Brady, but his predecessor, Paul Ryan, his predecessor, Dave Camp, there was a fixation on what tax policy, you were covering parts of that, of what maximized economic growth. You know, the old conservative economic theory of broaden the base, lower the rate, deal with the arrogance of the political class that think they know what the next revolution of economic growth is. Build it so whatever the technology breakthrough is, it's able to compete and grow. In many ways, we don't have that sort of classic build a model for long-run economic growth. And that's what makes some of this so difficult, is you have the time bomb sitting over you where taxes are going up. So your capacity is pretty limited. And then over here, what are you doing? Then you have the White House's influence of, these are constituencies I made promises to. And as soon as you start to build that up, you've consumed your capacity for what would help economic expansion.
So that part's heartbreaking to you.
It's like we walked away from a lot of our basic economics classes.
So, okay, well, yeah, because of the various factors that people are considering.
It's both that, and part of it is just dealing with the current law. The current law is we have these expiring provisions of 2017, so you got to deal with your reality. We avoid the reality of U.S. demographics at the end of this, you know, what is it, in 7, 8, 9 years, 23% of America is 65 and up. Incentives within, you know, looking at the reality of what we are as a people. And so much of our economic design and debate is from previous decades. We're out of date in our debate.
So at the end of the day, sort of getting back to it's essentially what can everybody live with? What can you live with at the end of the day with this bill?
I'm intensely concerned that if the term premium on interest rates continues to either stay where it's at right this moment or expand, almost every bit of good we're doing with adding expensing, research and development expensing, many of these things will be consumed in the economy with higher interest rates. Think about this, from the beginning of the year till I think yesterday's, let's just use the 10, just that change in interest rate will be almost $2 trillion of just additional interest on U.S. sovereign debt. That basically means in 2035, we're borrowing almost 9% of the economy. This year, we're going to borrow about 7.3% 7.3% is my model. One of my economists has it down to 7.2, but rounding errors, I guess, when it's trillions. And there's this game of, well, I need to make people happy right now, but the reality of it is, unless you're convincing the bond markets and the fact that how much borrowable money is in the world, when Germany's back in the debt markets, you see what's going on the long end of the curve in Japan. China's actually still binging on debt. We seem to be avoidance of big boy economics. Mm-hmm. And so there's my concern is there are ways to make this current reconciliation or make it public that the very next reconciliation, we're going to be right in the tail of this one with a number of our modernization of how we deliver government services. If you could tie those two together, I think you could make markets and a lot of the political class more understanding and less nervous about the debt load.
Speaking about nervousness, you've seen quite a few prominent leaders in business, Jamie Dimon, one, and we've seen some of the articles and the warnings about the federal debt and many of the projections you just mentioned here. And the markets are eventually going to speak. And they're speaking and they're watching. And eventually they're going to speak and potentially force those tough conversations.
Yeah. Look, we're on the cusp of deciding that the world debt markets will run the country.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be brutally honest. I don't think the equity markets are as good a tell.
It's bond market.
It's bond markets, it's debt markets. And look, when you have, Ray running around Dilio, making it, now he makes a capacity argument. How much savings is in the world to satiate sovereigns around the world binging? Okay, for any of you who are representing businesses, you've decided you're going to grow your business. So we're having this conversation of investing in America. But now you have to find capital where you get to compete with, U.S. sovereigns coming to market. So this year we borrow about $6 billion a day. Next year it looks like we'll borrow about $7 billion a day. In 9 budget years, we borrow $10 billion a day. And there becomes the classic problem. So what happens if you get regulatory policy right? You crowdsource regulation, you do all these things, you modernize it, you get the tax policies correct, so your cap rates and those things make sense. But then you go to capital markets, and capital's more expensive, and it's harder to get because we're binging. And there's the classic problem is we talk our book over here because explaining that this debt is driven by our demographics and telling our voters that is really difficult. But if you don't deal with this, how do you make this work?
So what do you say to your voters? What do you say to your constituents?
For all of you, if you've ever been to the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, I'm blessed. I have one of the best educated districts in America. It's very entrepreneurial. So in many ways, even though I'm in functionally a 50-50 district, if you talk to your voters like adults and say, look, here's what we're up against, here's what's going on, it's shocking how much smarter the voters are than often the political class. And it's one of my moments of just intense frustration is, and look, look at your media career, the types of things you would do compared to, let's be honest, some of the competitors, where they're talking down, the political class talks down to people. And there really is this desire for formats like this to actually saying, I'm tired of you treating me like a child. Give us math, give us facts, we can handle it. And within that, there's actually hope. There's ways to make it work. But that window of policy options squeezes down every single day. If every day you're $6 billion plus additional in debt, your policy options just got smaller and smaller every single day.
And we just have a few more seconds speaking to an audience, so to your voters, to your constituents, here to this audience, a very sophisticated one at that. What would you want to say to them that would give them some more optimism over the next 12 months and certainty?
Yeah, you had to add the optimism part. Look, if many of you represent, you work with business concerns, think tanks, research, how do I get you to get off your backsides and start showing up? I'll do this really quickly. In 2017, we're negotiating the first time in 30-some years. And this thing doesn't stop ringing. And all of a sudden, it's Jamie Dimon on my phone. It's the head of this corporation, that corporation. The C-suite got involved in policy, and it was shocking how brutally honest they were, saying, this will help us grow, we'll invest this if you do this. I know you guys are looking at this. It really doesn't make a difference in how we design our capital stack and our investment policy. The C-suite hasn't shown up, and hasn't shown up in years. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce hasn't shown up in years. And it's because much of business, much of the chamber world became rent seekers. Show up and say, we want a subsidy for this, we want a subsidy for this, we want a special carve out for this. It's the concept of we want markets and the talent and the ideas and the passion of where technology, where opportunity takes us will grow. Instead, you wanted almost a planned industrial policy economy. And if you don't like it, I can prove it. Take a look at the things we're even debating now of Inflation Reduction, CHIPS Act, all these other things. That is planned economy. We're going with the arrogance of political class and corporate America saying, give us a subsidy and we'll do this, even though that might be second or third generation old technology, instead of showing up. And I'm shocked. So I'm number 4 in Ways and Means. I chair the Joint Economic Committee, and I've had 1 or 2 C-suite folks come visit me in the last year.
Wow.
But they'll often send me their contract lobbyists, which are wonderful people, and have no idea what they're talking. And it's also hard, because I have like 5 PhD economists that work for me. And so they'll sit down next to this young man who's, bathing is somewhat optional, but they're really, really smart. And we're trying to fix things, and they're talking the book on this little issue. If you want what a sophisticated audience like this can do, get off your backsides, get in the game, help us save the future, help us grow the economy, help us make this another American century. And then instead of just pitching your 3 sentences in the tax code, the complete lack of vision, the complete lack of morality of understanding what we're doing to your retirement, to your kids, to your grandkids. It's the micro level of rent seeking that goes on now in political discourse is almost dystopian.
It's a profound and good piece of advice.
And it's a huge change just in 7 years.
Wow. I wish we did have more time on this, but how I want to end it is, Congressman, thank you for showing up.
And now you know why I never get invited back a second time. Thank you all.
Thank you.